Hi there, I'm Jim Zirin. Welcome back for more conversations. Yoruba Richen is with us. Yoruba is an award-winning documentary filmmaker, the founding director of the documentary film program at the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at the City University of New York, CUNY. Her latest project is a blockbuster film called Free Joan Little, about the first woman in U.S. history to be acquitted of murder on grounds of self-defense to sexual violence. The case was tried 50 years ago, in August 1975. Little, then a 20-year-old Black woman, fatally stabbed Clarence Alligood, a white guard in prison who, she said, tried to rape her in the Beaufort County Jail in eastern North Carolina. The matter captured national and international attention from leaders of the civil rights, women's rights, and prison reform movements, featuring such luminaries as Rosa Parks, Angela Davis, Julian Bond, and Shirley Chisholm. Yoruba Richen researched the case, interviewed many of the participants, and in a riveting film records this extraordinary event for history. We're pleased to welcome Yoruba Richen to the program.
Thank you.
Oh, tell us about your background and how you got into documentary films. You're an icon of the documentary film field.
I think that's the first time I've been called an icon. So to squeeze a long story into a shorter story, I grew up in the theater. My mom was a playwright. I did a lot of theater. I was here in New York, grew up here in New York. I went to LaGuardia High School, the Fame School, majored in drama. And so storytelling was always a part of my life. And social issues were always a part of my life because of the influence of my mom, who was a playwright. And when I got to college, I started doing, a little bit more directing, still lots of theater. Had watched documentaries. At that time, really PBS was the only game in town for documentaries. So my mom and I would watch documentaries together. Like I remember watching Eyes on the Prize, the classic civil rights documentary, seeing films by the great Stanley Nelson, who later became a mentor of mine. One of the first ones I remember seeing is about Madam C.J. Walker, the first millionaire, female millionaire who built a hair care company. And I was learning all this history that I thought was incredible, that I wasn't necessarily learning in school, and that these films could actually show you history and teach you about things in a riveting, engaging way. So I always loved documentary, but it never seemed something that was doable in terms of a career. And it wasn't until after graduating college in the early 90s when the technology got smaller and more feasible for one person to go out and make videos. We called them prosumer cameras at that time. And that's when I started making my first video. I made my first video. I was living in San Francisco. I made my first video when I was in graduate school about public education, about welfare reform, and then about public education. And I never looked back. It just really brought together all the things that I was interested in terms of research and telling a story and talking and showing these social issues and how they affected people. And so that's how I started. And I moved back to New York and kind of worked my way up. I was also at ABC News for 4 years in the investigative unit. So learned the journalism part of the part of documentary, and was at Democracy Now! As well when I was making my first film. And that's how I started.
So, Joan Little, 50 years ago, how did you find this case, or how did it find you?
Yeah, so I was making a film about Rosa Parks called The Rebellious Life of Mrs. Rosa Parks. And it's the first feature documentary about her life. And really her radical activism is what we focused on. It's based on a book by the same name that really focused on, Rosa was often put in a box as just being on the bus and the Montgomery bus boycott, but she had a long history of activism. And part of that activism that was throughout her life was shining a light on sexual violence against Black women, which she started investigating in the 1940s in the South. And one of the cases that she was actively advocating for was Joan Little, in 1974, when she was in Detroit, and she started the Free Joan Little Detroit chapter. And we were making the film, found all this footage that was there. It was very widely covered at the time. And it was one of those stories where I was like, oh my gosh, this is not even that long ago, but I don't know this fascinating story. And I knew I wanted to, dive deeper into the film, dive deeper into her story. And that's how I came to make a film about
How long did the project take you?
Well, we actually started about 2.5, almost 3 years ago. And it's a short film. But yeah, that's when we started. And we just debuted at Doc NYC.
So start to finish, when you started the project and then you finished it before it was shown in the premiere, how long was that, 2.5 years?
Yeah, about almost 3. Because it was raising the money. I've had incredible partners. The organization Retro Report, which I've worked with in the past, came on board as co-producers, who were, incredible in getting this to the finish line. My producer, Crystalline Hampton, who was a producer on the Rosa Parks film. Those are the 2 people I went to immediately when I decided to make this film, and we've been on this journey together, and it's been really great. But documentaries often take time. A lot of the time, it's about fundraising.
Well, it's a fascinating case because it kind of meets at the intersection of racial issues, of women's rights issues, Me Too issues, prisoners' rights issues. It has everything. And then, of course, there was the possibility of capital punishment. So if you have views on capital punishment, it's all there for you. So you masterfully bundled it all together. Why don't you tell us the story of Joan Little and how you unfolded it in your documentary?
Yeah, so Joanne, as you mentioned in your intro, was a 20-year-old young Black woman in Washington, North Carolina. And she was a poor woman, had run-ins with the law. She was in jail for kind of petty crimes and had been given a long sentence. One of our interviewees talks about how the real over-policing that was happening at that time in segregated North Carolina in the 70s, and she. One night, her jailer, Clarence Alligood, who was a white jailer, she testified that he came in with an ice pick, demanded sex, and
She had been in jail about 2.5 months when this happened.
Yes, exactly, awaiting her trial, and she said no, and there was some kind of altercation, and she got the ice pick and she fatally stabbed him. And then
stabbed him 11 times.
Yes, brutally stabbed him. And then she escaped, and she was on the run, and that's where we kind of start in the film. She was on the run for about a week, hid in the Black community, and had after about a week, one of the local activists negotiated got Jerry Paul, a white lawyer who was known in the Black community for defending African Americans, and he became her lawyer. He got on the case, and he negotiated for Joanne to give herself up, and then that's when everything, began. He brought on Karen Bethia Shields as his co-counsel. She was one of the first Black women to graduate from Duke Law School. And he also shrewdly, he and Karen knew that they needed the support of the people in order for this case to garner the press, garner the finances to pay for it. And he enlisted Larry Little, who's no relation to Joanne, who's a Black Panther, and he enlisted him to start the Free Joanne Little Defense Committee. And those are the voices that I interview in the film, as well as Angela Davis, who came on who had just been freed about a year or so, had just been freed in her case, and she became one of the advocates for Joanne. And also in the film, I interview Christina Green, who wrote a book about the case.
Okay, so the first step was before she surrendered to the authorities, Jerry Paul held a press conference. And so it was part of his strategy.
Yes, what Jerry and Karen did, and Larry, is really go to the people to create a movement around her defense. And it really became international, in fact.
Yes. Well, I mean, a lawyer would say, well, the first job is to get your client the best possible defense within the canons of ethics. But he saw the case in a larger picture and realized that social pressure, for whatever reason, was if it was on the side of his client, was important. Now, what was one thing that happened here was there were articles in the local press that were extremely unfavorable to Joan Little. And they suggested that Alligood, the jailer, had been killed in the line of duty. It turned out he wasn't in the line of duty at all. He was in the course of having a sex act with this woman who was his prisoner.
And Karen talks about that, seeing the autopsy report, and that's when she realized what was actually happening, that it was a situation of rape.
Now, the trial was supposed to occur in Beaufort County, North Carolina, which is where the small town of Washington, population 10,000, was where she grew up. And the first job that Paul had, and Karen as well, was to get the case out of Beaufort, where polls showed that the attitudes of people who might serve on the jury were very unfavorable to Joanne. So they made a motion for a change of venue.
And they got it.
And they won.
Yeah.
And it was transferred to Raleigh now for trial. Now, the judge said that he was transferring the case because the security was insufficient in Washington, and also because they didn't have accommodations for all the press that would be there. But Jerry Paul was quick to say, well, no, it was really done because she couldn't get a fair trial. But the judge said she could get a fair trial, but he was transferring it anyway. So that's the way our system works. No one knows for sure why the case is transferred, but it was transferred. So we have the trial. Now tell us a little bit about the trial, how that unfolded.
So the trial was really monumental in that Jerry and Karen, wanted, and Joanne wanted her to testify. Now, as you know, a lot of times in these self-defense cases, it doesn't make sense for the accused to testify, but she wanted to tell her story. And for a rape victim at that time, to do that was also very rare. I mean, it's still rare today. So the fact that she...
Well, it's hard to establish a rape case
absolutely
without the complainant on the stand. So.
Yeah, and for, as...
In fact, it's impossible.
And the rape victim, survivor is often, accused themselves. But she wanted to tell her story. And not only that, but they had other women from the jail who also testified that Alligood was known to ask for sexual favors. I think that was a turning point also in
That was
the case.
very significant evidence.
Yeah.
There were at least 3 women
At
who
least
had been
3
in
women.
the jail.
Yeah. And the testimony that she gave, Larry talks about it in the film, how, there were tears in the eyes of women who listened to her testimony, so they believed her. And the prosecution, we have to remember this is 1975 in North Carolina, segregated North Carolina. The white prosecutors, came off as just dismissive and racist and sexist. So they didn't do themselves any favors, as well. And
now you had a jury of 6 white, 6 black, and I think about 9 women, and this was the first case where that's on record, where they used scientific techniques of jury work to figure out what the profile should be of people who would give her
which
a
is
fair
now
trial.
very, very
now
common.
It's quite common.
Yep. And but it still was, it still was not a sure thing, obviously, that she would be acquitted.
And the theory of the prosecution was that she really wanted to escape from prison, and she enticed the jailer into the cell.
Exactly.
And then killed him, and so she could escape.
Yep. And you talked a little bit about the press. There were press reports calling her, a jailhouse whore, murderess. The press was also not on her side. So the odds were, it was not clear. It was in no way a sure thing. Meanwhile, the organizing outside of around this case was huge. You mentioned, Julian Bond, Shirley Chisholm, as I said, Angela Davis. And it really, what was fascinating to me is how it brought together these different movements at the time. We think the progressives or the lefts are constantly infighting. In the 70s, it was the same way. I mean, you had the white feminists and the Black Power people and the LGBT folk, all with different strategies, different goals. But they came together around this case. They really came together around this case because it brought in all these different these movements and all these different things that folks were advocating and fighting for at the time.
Okay, so then after about a month of trial, the jury deliberates for about an hour, and they come back unanimous verdict of not guilty.
Yep.
She's acquitted. So, and what did the jurors say afterwards as to why they had reached a verdict of acquittal?
Well, we have one clip of a jury woman who said, we put everything out of our mind that could really be prejudicial, and we listened to her and we believed her.
Well, and that's what the jury system is all about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us then what happened later. What have we learned from this case?
Well, I think, there's 50 years. It's a 50-year anniversary.
Has anything changed?
Well, I think what has changed, prison abuse and rape is obviously still very prevalent in the prison system, and we talk about that at the end of the film. So that hasn't stopped. But the fact that we have people speaking out about it, who are telling their stories, who can fight stigmatization, is, that's part of the Joan Little legacy. She was a poor Black woman in segregated North Carolina. The odds, there was a bounty on her head initially. The odds were really, really against her, and she insisted on telling her story. And I think that's also the legacy of Me Too as well. Women, as you know, rape is something that we are only now really talking about and understanding women's experience around this. And she was one of the first people to speak out. So though the problem isn't solved by any means, I think what Joan's Little case gives us inspiration and hope and courage at a time when, things can look really dire and victory can seem very unlikely. For me, it gives me courage and hope that, that in the face of it, there can still be victories. And Larry Little says it, so well in the film that we don't get all that we fight for in this country, but we have to fight for everything that we get.
Did you interview Larry Little for the film?
Yes, absolutely.
And
yeah.
how about Karen Bethea
And Karen as well.
Shields?
Yep, absolutely.
And I guess Larry Paul had passed away.
Yeah,
by the
Jerry
time
had passed away.
yes. Jerry Paul had passed
Yep.
away by the time you.
But we also interviewed Angela Davis as well.
Yeah.
And we were also really lucky. Feel so grateful that we dramatized the court scene. Because obviously there were no cameras at the time, but for the voice of Joanne, we have the Oscar-nominated actress Danielle Brooks reading her testimony.
Yes, that's one of the most moving and gripping parts of the film.
Yeah.
So, what happened to Joan Little after the acquittal? She still stayed in jail.
Yeah, so she had to. She did have to serve her time for those previous charges. And she actually ran away again. So she was tangled up in the criminal justice system. But we know that
Once in, it's hard to get out.
Yeah, as we know. But we do know now that Karen has told us that she has been raising some family members.
You didn't interview her?
No, we tried to, but she has not spoken publicly about the case in 30 years.
She was 48 years old when she got out of jail.
Yeah, has not. And so, I respect that. She doesn't want to be re-traumatized. She's told her story. So, but our Karen and Larry are in touch with her. And so we are hopeful that, that she'll see the film and feel good about the film.
And where do you expect to exhibit the film?
We don't know yet. We just premiered about a month ago, so we're waiting to see what's next. But
is it going to go to Sundance?
It's not going to go to Sundance, unfortunately. But there are many other festivals that we hope it does go to. But for folks who are interested, they can check out the website Retro Report. Free Joan Little will have information about upcoming screenings.
Okay, now what is next for Yoruba Richen?
Yes.
Tell us about your next project. Everyone has to have a project.
You have
I know you have one.
You have to, it's true. So I am working on a film about the great African-American abstract artist, Jack Whitten, which I am really excited about. Jack was an incredible, innovative artist who came from segregated Alabama to New York in the 1960s. He was trained at Cooper Union, was with, the Pollocks and the Rothkos and folks like that, but didn't really get his due as, an African-American abstract artist. But now he's getting his due. And there was a show that opened, his career retrospective opened at MoMA this summer to rapturous reviews. The Washington Post said, is Jack Whitten the best artist that you've never heard of, or something like that. So I'm making a film about his life, his work, his impact, and his legacy.
So I have a question for you, Yoruba Richen. Should social pressures influence trial outcome?
Well, I am not a lawyer, Jim, like yourself, but I do think that, just in terms of someone who's interested in human rights and fair trials, that of course you have to look at the facts of a case. That's what you do, and you have to put on a rigorous defense of your client. But there are cases, and and we've seen this all through history, that are larger than the actual case, and so that can sort of sway the be in the zeitgeist. And I don't know how it necessarily affects a trial, but I think that's something that we've seen all through history. And it's in the 70s, that was also the time, as I said, Angela Davis had recently been released. There was also a movement around her. So I think it happens.
So you conclude that the outcome of a trial can affect social justice. Can a documentary film affect social
Oh,
justice?
let's hope so. That's a reason why a lot of us make films. I mean, I think that documentary film can really impact people and impact their thinking. It can it can be a part of change, and I know that's why I part of the reason why I make films because of these social issues that I either want illuminated or affected policy in some way. So I think it can be a part of it.
Can be a part of it.
Yeah.
So Yoruba Richen, thank you so much for coming by. This has been marvelous.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for coming by. Tune in next week for more conversations. Meanwhile, take care, be well, all the best, and don't forget to download the CUNY TV app so you can watch this program and other wonderful programs on our website. Meanwhile, all the best.